and Sarah said together. No. Apparently Felicia also liked the idea. The whole way back they became trying to convince us to go there. As we arrived, now about 5 p.m., they stopped trying to convince us because Sarah started crying about it. We arrived and showered. They then asked us if it would be okay if only the two of them went there. I was a bit reluctant, as they would be breaking the law by doing that. Me and Sarah finally gave up, and told them to go. At about and went to the church. Me and Sarah stayed at the house, and soon, as we were tired, we went to sleep. This time, we left all the lights on. I wake up at around 11 a.m. Sarah was still sleeping. I stood up, and started to look around the house. No signal of Felicia or James. I then woke Sarah up, so we could figure out what to do. We ended up deciding to go into the village, and call the police. We walked to the police station, but it was closed. Then, we decided to call on the house next to the police station. An old woman then opened her door. We asked about the police officer. She said that the police officer was her husband, and that he had to go to the neighbor town, as he was the only police officer of both these towns. She also said that he would be back in around 2 days and asked if something was wrong. I said no, that we were only looking around and got curious. We thanked the lady and started to walk home. Sarah then said, "Anan, why didn't you say that our friends were missing?" I answered, "Because not only she couldn't do nothing, maybe they show up or something, it would be better if they didn't get in trouble for that, right?" We stood the rest of the day inside the house, checking to see if they showed up in the distance. By the time night came, a huge storm was falling. We had something to eat, and watched a bit of TV. We then went to sleep, locking all windows and leaving the lights on. I woke up with a huge thunder. Sarah woke up as well. Everything was dark, as the storm probably knocked some energy line down. The house had no energy. I ran to my bag and got my flashlight. I illuminated Sarah, just so she could get her flashlight as well. We stood there, closed on our room, as thunder, rain, and lightning would go wild outside. We then heard some noises coming from inside the house. I then asked, "Maybe it's them?" Sarah just made a signal for me to stop talking. I stopped. Then we could better hear the noises. These noises were metallic, and a deep moaning could be heard along. Suddenly the noises stopped. We looked at each other. I stood up, and started heading for the door. Sarah came right behind me, and said, "I think we forgot to close the second floor window." I slowly opened the door, revealing the dark hallway. We then started to walk in the direction of the living room. As we got in, the living room was quiet. We illuminated the kitchen as well, and it was empty. We then hear a noise coming from upstairs, almost like a deep moan. We illuminated the top of the stairs. I wish to this day we didn't do that. At the top of the stairs, was an old lady wearing a white dress. She was very white, and her body was all wounded. Her dress had big red stains and rips. She had her hands chained, and the rest of the big black chain was on the ground. Her face was all wounded as well, and she didn't had her lower jaw, what made her tongue just fall out from her mouth. Chains would also come from the wall into her face, making her facial features all weird. The eyes were swollen, completely black. As we saw that, we got startled. The thing then made a loud noise, almost as she was trying to scream. Me and Sarah screamed, and ran back into our room, locking ourselves in. As we locked the door behind us, something started to bang in the other side of the door. We quickly used her bed as a barricade on the door, got a bunch of sheets, and hid ourselves under the other bed. Through the next hours, we kept hearing noises from outside, things being thrown around, chains, and banging on the door. At some point, we heard the room's door being forced in. The bed that was barricading it fell with a loud bang. I forced my hand on Sarah's mouth so she wouldn't scream. I then started smelling a moldy smell again. I could hear the noise of chains being dragged through the room's floor. could hear slow and heavy footsteps coming in the direction of our bed. The steps stopped right by the bed. I closed my eyes and started praying. For what seemed like an eternity, I could hear the thing moving around the bed. Then it finally went away. The chain noises didn't stop for a long while after that. It only went away when the rain stopped, and I could hear birds singing on the afternoon. We got out from under the bed and ran straight to the front door. We got out to the front yard, and Sarah fell on her knees and started to cry. I sat by her side, shaking as well. After some time she stopped crying. She said, "Anan, I wanna go home." I then started thinking. I grabbed her by her hand, and started walking in the direction of the village. I then said, "We are going to the police." As we arrived, we went straight to the police station. We stopped at the front of the police station, and Sarah sat down and started to cry again. I started to shake badly as well. The police station and the house by its side were in ruins, and it seemed like they were that way for a long time. I sat on the street, trying to figure out what was happening. I then heard the noise of a horse approaching. A black man was mounting the horse, and was coming on our direction. "Is everything okay?" he asked us. I just nodded no. He then said he lived nearby, and we could go there with him. I considered for a second, looked at Sarah, and decided to go with him. As we arrived at his house, it was a small house, but you could see that it was well cared for. He invited us inside. There, an old black lady was in a rocking chair in the living room, and a woman was at the kitchen with a child. He said his name was Jamal. He lived there with his wife Jasmine, his mother, and his son. Jasmine then made us some tea. We started by asking him about the cop and his wife. He looked at us for a moment and said, "Listen kids, this town was an old leprosy isolation colony. There is nobody living here aside from my family and about 2 or 3 more. They burned the whole place down after they left, so there is no police, nor anything like that." We then described the old dude that went to our house the first day. As we all looked at her, and she pointed to a picture on top of a shelf. Jamal stood up, got the picture and went pale. Then he said, "Anan, is this the dude you have seen?" He showed us an old black and white picture in a wooden frame. The man was there. At his side, in a wheelchair, an old lady looking like the one from the other night, wearing a tissue on her face. I felt chills down my spine. I nodded, confirming. The old woman then said, "Anan, this man died over 30 years ago. He was the security officer around the facility, and his wife had leprosy. He shot himself after she passed away. I know that because I was a nurse here at the time." Sarah then pointed at the picture and covered her face. I looked at it again. On the background, the old church. I then asked Jamal if he believed in ghosts and stuff like that. He replied, "I have seen enough around here to believe." Sarah then told them what we had seen at night. After she finished telling them, everyone got quiet. I then said, "We want to go home, but our friends are out there." They went to look around the old church. Jasmine put her hand over her mouth. Jamal then said, "We don't really go there." I then asked if something could be done. He said he had an old car, that he could probably go with us, and have a look around. "I'm not going," said Sarah. Then it was decided, as it was about 5 p.m. already, that me and Jamal would go to the old church and have a look around. Sarah was to stay with Jasmine and the rest of the family. I took a flashlight and a bat that he gave me, and he took an old headlamp and a rifle. We got in an old Volkswagen Fusca, and began driving in the direction of the church. As we neared it, dusk was falling already. At the front of the church, the Fiat Uno was parked. We stopped our car behind it, and got out of the car. We walked together to the church, only to find out the main doors were locked. We started going around the building trying to find an entrance. Night fell really quickly, and we turned on our flashlights. We then saw a window opened on the second floor, and some vines leading to them. We agreed to climb up, and in no time we were inside it. The church was big inside, had second-floor balconies, and a big main floor under it. On the main floor, lots of room and benches, all dusty. On the roof, a big part had collapsed, making the moon illuminate part of the church. It had an altar, and from up the balcony I could see symbols that were drawn on the altar walls. They were satanic symbols. I heard Jamal whispering, "Damn vandals." I looked at the altar again. There, laying down, there was the faint figure of a woman. I pointed at it, and Jamal nodded. We found a way down through some stairs. We started walking in the direction of the altar. As we were getting close to it, a figure arose. Felicia, with her hair in front of her face. I called her. "Felicia?" She sort of twitched, and started coming on our direction, walking in a weird way. Then she stopped midway, and her hair finally got out from her face. Her face was pale, and she had dark circles under her eyes. Her eyes were completely black and her face was stretched. She then started to talk in a guttural voice, some weird things. Jamal raised his gun then said, "Jesus Christ." I raised my bat. She went straight to me, screaming. I hit her right in the head with the bat, making her collapse unconscious on the ground. I said, "Oh fuck, oh fuck." Suddenly we start hearing chains getting dragged from the upper floor. Jamal then says, "We need to get out." I then grab Felicia and run to the front door. Her face is looking normal again. I go through her pockets and find the keys to the car. Jamal then gets distance and kicks the front door. It made a very loud noise but it didn't break. I then set Felicia on the ground and we both kicked the door. The door opened with a loud crack. I grab Felicia and we run to the Fiat and no. Behind us, we hear a guttural scream. We get in the car, Jamal gets in the passenger seat, and I place Felicia on the back seat. I make a U-turn, and floor it. As we were going by the road, a black figure was standing in the way. The same black figure I had seen when we were arriving at the village. Jamal opened the passenger window, and shot at the thing with the rifle. The thing didn't disappear, and the car went right by it as if it wasn't even there. As the thing passed inside the car, I felt cold, and sadness. The car went full speed on the mud, the turbo roaring in fury, until we arrived Jamal's house. We got inside, and waited the night. Through the night, we could hear steps outside, along with a dragging sound. Jasmine had barricaded the doors and windows, except for the main one, which she did as we got in. Felicia woke up in the middle of the night, but we made her go quiet. She was very confused, but she understood that she had to be quiet. At dawn, we thanked Jamal and his family for the help. We then had to make the hard decision of leaving James behind. We did, and went by car to the nearest city. There we went straight to the cops, and told them he had disappeared. Felicia moved out some days later from our house. I ended up dating Sarah for a while after that. James was given as lost. They never found him.
Wife asks